from West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the following is provided by the West Virginia Department of Education and West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Hey everyone, it's Education Station, the show where we invite teachers from all across West Virginia to submit videos of themselves teaching their favorite lessons. In today's episode, we've got a fun science lesson and 2 awesome read-alouds. Well, hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Alex Milanese, and we're kicking off today's episode with an exciting science lesson. Miss Sinisi is about to put the fun in fungi. Let's check it out.
Today our video is on fungi. I haven't done a video on anything of the plant kingdom, so I was going to look first at fungi and then we'll go on to plants and then we'll look at animals. So fungi is a kingdom in and of itself, right? It's one of the 5 along with plants and animals and protists, and we can look at all of the 5 kingdoms if you'd like in a different video. It includes some of the most important organisms both in terms of their ecological and their economic roles within our environment. They break down dead organic materials. They're what's called decomposers, right? If we compose something, we put it together, right? You write music but if we decompose, we're taking it apart. So what they do is they break down all of the dead organisms so that we can reuse them. And we're going to look at what we reuse from dead organisms. Most vascular plants have a symbiotic relationship with them. Remember, we've talked about symbiotic relationships before, meaning same life. Right? They're helping each other. So they inhabit the roots underneath of trees or vascular plants, and they give nutrients to those trees and vascular plants. What that's called is an endomycorrhizal association. If you see this mycorrhizal, that has to do with a fungus every time. And we're not going to look really at the reproductive cycles of fungi. That's more of a deep biology subject. They also provide us with numerous drugs, including penicillin and other antibiotics. Penicillin, most people know, comes from bread mold, and so mold is a fungus. Foods like mushrooms, truffles, and morels, a lot of these we see around here. People go out and pick mushrooms and eat them. You should never go out and just pick a mushroom and eat it because you don't know what it is. And then truffles, those are the ones that the pigs smell out, and then morels, they look like little trees, right? And then I was going to give this example, which we'll come back to in a little bit, is of a yeast. We use yeast when we make bread, when we make champagne, when we make beer. And what we use it for is its fermentation properties, or this fermentation process. And we'll look at that in a little bit. They also cause a number of plant and animal diseases. In humans, we can get ringworm, that's a fungus. Athlete's foot, that's a fungus. And a lot of other different fungi. Plants get what are called rusts or smuts. Those are fungal infections that could kill the plants. Let's look at their role as decomposers. Most of them are decomposers, what are called saprotrophs. If you break this word down, we've looked at troph before, like heterotroph, autotrophs. Troph means to eat. Sapro means rotten. So essentially they're eating rotten things, decomposing, things that are already dead, they're already rotten. They are the only decomposers that can break down wood and cellulose in plant cell walls. Cellulose is made up of glucose all hooked together, and we looked at glucose as a byproduct of photosynthesis, and this makes up plant cell walls, which gives them their rigidity, right, and their structure. So we have this tree and it's growing in the dirt, there's its roots, there's its leaves, and as this tree grows, especially around here, they lose their leaves, right? So this green leaf falls to the ground, and some of these leaves that fall into the ground can be eaten by worms or other animals or insects. So here's a little worm that's eating this leaf, right? So, and once that's eaten, what happens is with that dead organic material, those nutrients leach into the soil by a chemical action, meaning they soak in, right? They leach into it. And if that doesn't happen, then we get this little leaf that falls to the ground. If it's not eaten by a worm or an animal, these partially consumed leaves get attached to this fungi, right? And bacteria, and they become what's called detritus or leaf litter. And they're dead leaf products. So here are a couple of fungi that are feeding off of this decomposing this dead leaf. Or we can get further decomposition by earthworms, like fishing worms that you all see, bacteria, soil mites, fungi, any of those things all go back into making our organic, rich soil. And when we're going to look at what makes that rich, what makes you want to plant, and then in turn, why do these plants grow well in this type of soil, right? Okay. The action of that fungi, when it's decomposing that dead leaf or whatever dead material, it's going to release these two elements, nitrogen and phosphorus. 78% of our atmosphere is made of nitrogen. It's a very important element, right? And so what they do is they release those from that decaying matter into the soil where other organisms can use them. This makes our soil very rich with nitrogen and phosphorus. Fungi degrade large insoluble molecules by producing a variety of coenzymes. These enzymes sort of eat the molecules or break the molecules down. They're released into the substrate, that's whatever something's laying on, or they remain bound to the outside of the fungal cell wall, right? So we have these large molecules, we break them down into small molecules, and these protein carriers carry them into the cells, which help all of our plants, right? Reaction is dependent upon water. This reaction is dependent upon water. That's why we find fungi in moist environments. In the desert, where it's hot and dry all the time, you don't find many fungi. But if you go here, we've talked about temperate deciduous forest, you'll find a lot of different types of fungi, the rainforest even more, because of that moist environment where that fungi thrive in, right? They have to, because this reaction is driven by that water. Here are some fungi facts. The word fungus comes from the Latin word for mushrooms, and that's what we typically call them. You don't call them fungi, typically. More than one fungus or fungi, right? In Latin, we drop the US and add the I. Eukaryotes, right? We've talked about that before. These are just cells that have a membrane-bound nucleus. So they aren't like bacteria. Remember, bacteria did not have a membrane-bound nucleus. They do. Scientists have identified about 100,000 species, but they think that's only a fraction of the 1.5 million species that are present on Earth. They're more closely related to animals than they are to plants. They cannot photosynthesize, right? They can't take the sun and make their own food. They multiply sexually, asexually, or both. And the both is a whole big, long discussion that we won't go into called alternation of generations, and it's like a moss, and there are a bunch of gametophyte, sporophyte words that we don't know. So one day maybe we'll look at mosses and we'll talk about alternation of generations. They often interact with other organisms and they form these beneficial mutualistic associations. We'll show you some pictures that will be along with this video on what are called lichens. If you're walking around in the woods around here on the trunks of trees, you see those green, kind of looks like paint on the trunks of trees. Those are a combination, a symbiotic beneficial mutualistic association between a fungus and an alga. So the alga photosynthesizes and the fungus decomposes. But it's just a little association, and that's called a lichen, and I'll show you some pictures of those. The usefulness, right? We're going to look again at that yeast I talked about in the beginning. We use it to leaven. That's what we call leavened bread. Molds are used to ripen things like blue cheese. If any of you eat blue cheese, it kind of has that pungent smell and that acrid taste. That's from the blue cheese, right? And then those molds, they produce antibiotics also, like penicillin. So our example is yeast. Everyone's heard of yeast, right? Because we've all heard of bread. We all know people that bake bread or buy bread at the store. It's single-celled fungus. These are called, the name of the fungus are Saccharomycetes, and you don't need to know that. Sacro kind of means sugar, right? When you see myces like this, that means fungus. So that we can look at. But the yeast will digest sugar to obtain energy. So we have different forms of sugar that this yeast will digest. I've told you before, anytime you see OSE on a word, it means sugar. So sucrose, that's beet or cane sugar, right? And fructose and glucose, things like honey or molasses. And maltose is starch that's in flour. We find starch in flour because flour is a plant product. So how does that happen? It's a process called alcoholic fermentation. We get alcoholic because one of the products is ethyl alcohol. So it's alcoholic fermentation. It also produces carbon dioxide gases. So when we put that into the dough to leaven it, you set it on put warm water, can't be cold water, has to be warm. Remember, we've talked about we have to have the heat for this process to occur. And then that yeast starts to multiply within that dough, and these byproducts of this reaction, this carbon dioxide gas and this ethyl alcohol can't escape. So it causes that dough to expand and to rise. That's what we're looking for in our bread. The ethyl alcohol produces, that gives that bread that distinct aroma that we all like when we smell it when it's baking, and the flavor of bread. So these two byproducts of this alcoholic fermentation help to raise the bread and help to give the bread its flavor, right? There are two pathways for ATP production in alcoholic fermentation. We have glucose, there's our sugar, and it goes through what's called glycolysis, and we get pyruvate. We get ATP, energy production, here, and it can go two ways. We can go toward the acetaldehyde way, where we get the ethanol, which is ethyl alcohol, we've looked at this way. Or we can also go to get acetyl coenzyme A, and we get the carbon dioxide. So once we ferment whatever sugar it is we're looking for, then we can get these beneficial byproducts that help us. So you can see there are many ways that fungus help us and also hinder us, good things and bad things, in our ecosystem. And we will show you some pictures and some videos of these along with this.
Thanks, Miss Sinisi. All right, next up, Mrs. Milanese is going to read us a story about a hedgehog named Hector who needs some courage. Let's check it out.
Hello everyone, my name is Alicia Milanese, and today I'm going to be reading you a story. I found this story on an app called Epic. Epic is a free app that you can download onto a phone, tablet, or iPad, and there are tons of stories to choose from. I chose a really cool one for us today, so let's check it out. This book is called Hector's Favorite Place. It is written and illustrated by Joe Rooks. Hector loved his home. It was his favorite place to be. At home, there was always so much to do. Hector loved his home so much that he didn't often go out. Home was cozy and snuggly and safe. But Hector liked to hear all of the news of the forest when his friends came to visit. One day, Hector was just having a little nap when there was a knock at the door. "Hector, have you seen? It's snowing outside," said Archie. "Let's go for a walk in the forest and make footsteps." "Jumping June bugs," said Hector. "So it is," and he ran off to get his boots. But then Hector began to worry. What if he got cold or caught the flu? Sorry, Archie, I can't," said Hector. "I've got so much to do. Maybe tomorrow." "What a shame," said Archie. The next day, Hector was reading his new book when the phone rang. Bring, bring. "Hello, Hector, have you heard? The lake is frozen," said Max. "Would you like to come ice skating?" "Hopping honeybees," said Hector. Hector used to go skating when he was small. It was so much fun. Hector was just about to say yes when he began to worry. What if he had forgotten how to skate? He could fall over and hurt himself. Sorry, Max, I can't. I've got so much to do. Maybe tomorrow." "What a shame," said Max. Later on, Hector was just tucking into his favorite supper when a letter landed on the doormat. "Dear Hector, you were invited to the winter forest party. There will be music, dancing, and hot chocolate for everyone tomorrow at 10 o'clock. That sounds like fun, thought Hector. But then Hector began to worry. He worried about going into the forest far from home. What if I get lost? He worried about the music. What if it's too loud, he thought. He worried about the dancing. What if I can't dance, he thought. He even worried about the hot chocolate. What if it's too hot, he thought. I will have to say I'm too busy to go, sighed Hector, and he decided to go to bed. That night, Hector didn't sleep very well. Archie and Max were sure to be at the party. Would they be sad if Hector wasn't there? Hector knew deep down that his worries were stopping him from going and enjoying himself. He realized he had to be brave. In the morning, Hector put on his best bow tie. You can do this, he said to himself. What a lovely day for a party, thought Hector, as he strolled proudly along the path. His boots made big prints in the snow as he went. He could hear the music playing as he walked further into the forest. It sounded beautiful. Crunch, crunch, crunch to the forest. Hector came to a clearing where everyone was dancing and enjoying themselves. Hector watched from behind a tree. Maybe I should go home, he thought nervously. Then Hector closed his eyes and pictured himself twirling around to the music. Imaginary Hector was the life and soul of the party. If only, he thought lovingly. All of a sudden, Hector realized that his feet were tapping along to the beat. His prickles were swaying to the rhythm, and before he knew it, he was dancing. Hector enjoyed himself so much that his worries didn't seem to matter anymore. Archie and Max were so pleased Hector had joined the party. They drank the last of the hot, not too hot, chocolate, and the music came to an end. There's only one more thing to do, Hector said. Ice skating. Eek! Oops! Yikes! And with a little practice, Hector discovered that skating was just as fun as he remembered. And being a hedgehog meant falling over didn't hurt one bit. Time to go home, Hector, said Archie. Your favorite place to be, said Max. Hector thought for a minute. I think I found another favorite place to be, he said. Now, where shall we go tomorrow? The end.
Thanks, Mrs. Milanese. Now, just as a quick warning, our final segment today might make you a little bit hungry. Miss McNeil has picked out a story called Who Grew My Soup? And I think you're going to like it. Let's check it out.
Hi guys, this is Kimmery McNeil coming to you from Read Aloud. And today I'm going to share with you a book called Who Grew My Soup? And it's a story about how important it is for families to garden and to grow their own food. And this book is written by Tom Dobbershire and illustrated by C.F. Payne. And I think you will really enjoy this story. So let's get going. Today's story is Who Grew My Soup? It's written by Tom Dobbershire and illustrated by C.F. Payne. A boy of age 10 named Phineas Quinn was out playing ball when his mom called him in. It's lunchtime, she said. Here's something nutritious. This instantly made young Finn Quinn most suspicious. It's yummy, she said with a smile brightly beaming, as she gave him a bowl of soup, gently steaming. Look at his face. He doesn't look like he wants to eat that, does he? Finn looked down and thought, yuck, it's vegetable gunk. The foods I prefer are the foods she calls junk. Fake colors and flavors, delicious and dandy. They're in all my favorite sodas and candy. Chemical additives, yum, they're the best. The snack foods I crave are preserved and processed. I like stuff that's deep fried and loaded with sugars, but vegetable soup, yikes, I'd rather eat boogers. This looks too healthy. I bet it tastes icky. So Finn hatched a plan, and oh boy, was it tricky. You can see he's thinking about what he's going to do, huh? I'll eat it, said Finn. Yes, I'll happily do it, as soon as you're able to tell me who grew it. Like you always tell me, said Phineas Quinn. Don't put that in your mouth. You don't know where it's been. These veggies might come from some weird far-off land, like Adar Bungalola or Distanstan. They might come from places like North Losmania or Timbuktu or West Hinterloo. Oh my, look at his face. Who grew these carrots? Who grew these tomatoes? These beans and this barley? This corn, these potatoes? Who sprouted this spinach? Who planted these peas? And who picked this celery? Tell me now, please. I'll not take one sip of this vegetable goop unless you tell me this. Who grew my soup? While Finn thought himself oh so terribly clever, he'd never have guessed what came next. Never, ever. His eyes popped, his jaw dropped. He fumbled his spoon. From the sky came a flying tomato balloon. The pilot in goggles was shouting hello from a rather large cooking pot hanging below. Look, see? There's the cooking pot and there's the tomato. Hop in, hurry up, climb aboard, tally-ho. Where are we going? Finn asked, almost alarmed. We're going, the man said, to where soup is farmed. Mr. Mato, cheap soup supervisor, and we won't come back until you're super wiser. Our trip won't take long, not at all. No, indeed. This balloon can achieve supersonical speed. As soon as he said it, they flew away zoom, with a whoosh and a whirl and a big sonic boom. Finn summoned his courage. He took a look down and found they were already back on the ground. Finn, meet Farmer Hitchner. Hitchner, meet Finn. Mr. Hitchner's the farmer whose field we are in. These carrots, this field, and this farm are all his. Hitchner's a genius, a soup-growing whiz. What carrots? Asked Finn as he looked all around. They're down here, said Hitchner. They grow underground. They grow in the dirt, young Finn nearly gagged. Gee, I've only seen them in stores washed and bagged. Hitchner took hold of a green carrot top, tugged, turned, and twisted, and pulled it out. Pop! The most beautiful carrot the world's ever known. More perfect than any that's ever been grown. You see that there? A superstar carrot, Natu said. Can't beat it. So here's an idea. I'll wash it and you can eat it. Finn would rather get cooties, but being polite, he knew he had no choice. He must take a bite. Look at that picture of him. So he tried just a nibble, the smallest of munches, and soon he was making great bunches of crunches. Hey, this isn't bad. This carrot's incredible. It's sweet. What a treat. Say, this root is quite edible. There's something in carrots, said Mr. Matu, that is good for your eyesight, amazing and true. I eat them quite often, my vision is great. I can see at this moment that we are running late. So to do, Hitchner. Come on, Finn, let's go. We've more places to see where more soup veggies grow. It seemed that no sooner than they'd left the ground, they crossed 17 states and were dropping back down in a field of tomatoes, all ripe, red, and round. Finn, meet Farmer Perez. His thumbs are quite green. The tomatoes he grows are the best ever seen. This is delicious, nodded young Finn, as red, ripe tomato juice ran down his chin. Oh, good, super duper, cried Mr. Mato. Superlative, come on, we've got lots more to do. Farm to farm, field to field, whiz, whiz, whiz through the sky. From onions so fine they could make a man cry, to potatoes to peas in a blink of an eye. They stalked the best celery, they got to know beans. Met growers who know how to grow greener greens. See the tomato? And here's the pot. And his hat. Look at his hat. His hat's a pot too, isn't it? Matu gave a cheer at the end of the day. Those farmers deserve a big hip hip hooray. They're all superheroes. They're all super great. They grow the best soup anyone ever ate. But it's time to go home now, said Mr. Matu. You have your answers. My work here is through. And then, just like that, Finn was back in his chair, and that big bowl of soup, steaming hot, was still there. Guess I'll have to try it, said Phineas Quinn. So he opened his mouth and he spooned some soup in. He swallowed, he sighed, he knew he'd been beaten. That soup was the best thing he had ever eaten. Finn said, Hey, how come we've never had this before? His mom just laughed. Then she served him some more. So if you are someone who thinks soup is scary, if facing a bowl makes you worried and wary, take some soup in your spoon. Put the spoon to your lips and then say these words right out loud between sips. Who grew my soup? That's what I'd like to know. Who grew my soup? That's where I'd like to go. And a souped-up balloon might drop down from the blue with a friendly old fellow named Mr. Matu, who will take you aboard and then zoom off with you. It might not. But still, either way, any day you eat soup is a super good day. The end.
Thanks, Miss McNeil. All right, well, that wraps up everything for us here today on Education Station. We want to thank everyone who shared their awesome lessons. And we want to thank you for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Education Station.